We're going to State College for our next question. Kathleen writes in, it's been brought to my attention the Department of Corrections education budget does not get slashed when public education budgets in PA get slashed. Why is that?
Well, first off, you have to understand that the education section of the Department of Corrections budget is part of the overall Department of Corrections budget. But here's some facts you need to understand. 90% of our prisoners eventually go home someday. And what we have found with prisoners coming in, and we get about 12,000 new state prisoners every year, 43% of the men and 36% of the women do not have a high school diploma. And we all know the dropouts have had a hard time finding a job. Mm-hmm. Well, you add on top of that dropouts who don't have a high school education, who have a prison record, trying to find a job. So we believe, and it's a good policy, that you have to continue to try and educate. If they're willing to be educated, you have to continue to educate them. So our basic education and training in some sort of job skill, it gives that offender, and that's what we give them, it gives the offender a better chance that when they get out, they become a little more successful instead of a tax burden. And what we have found, it's also a matter of public safety.
There's a recidivism issue, too,
that's
correct?
Exactly right. The studies have shown that the more educated somebody is when they get released, the less likely they are to commit crimes and end up back in the prison system.
Okay. Karen from Reading has our next question, and she writes, Governor, first, thank you for this opportunity to ask you a question. In 2008, I was in a car accident. It was a fender bender. I'm not going to go into her entire medical history here because she gives great detail, but you have a copy of that, so you're familiar with it. But it ended with her, or it started with her thinking she had a minor injury. It turned into something major. She says it's been 4 years. She still does not have the full use of her arm. So her question to you is, where do you go when the insurance company screws you royally? And I think there's a broader question here, and the reason I included this is because as Attorney General, you had a pretty good Bureau of Consumer Protection at your disposal, and there's that old saying about you can't fight City Hall. So I think the broader question is here, can you fight the insurance companies?
Sure. I mean, if they are not doing something that they should be doing, you can do it. And the first place you should go to is call into the insurance commissioner. We have an insurance commissioner here in Pennsylvania. They oversee the industry, and the department does have a section that helps consumers directly right there who have questions regarding what the insurance companies are doing and whether they're paying to the full amount that they should be paying under coverage. You could also call the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General's office. And I think most people, when they think of consumer, and maybe with insurance they didn't think of consumer, when they think about those people who think of a consumer issue, they'll call the Consumer Protection section of the AG's office. They should be referring that over to our consumer people at the insurance department. Unfortunately, with Karen, she's already gone through the litigation, and so this is really closing the barn door afterwards. But for those people listening, if they have an insurance issue, pick up the phone and call the insurance department. You can find the insurance department on the web by just going to our website, www.pa.gov, and looking at the different different departments of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on there.
All right. Next up from Oakmont, Teresa writes in, since Pennsylvania is a death penalty state, I'm very disgusted that there are men on death row for over 30 years now. I join her in that. Okay. She goes on to say, I am okay with them having a few years to appeal, but 30 years later, taxpayers are still paying for their upkeep. I have lived in Pennsylvania all of my 54 years. Every time a governor signs on to an execution, somehow it always gets blocked. I voted for you because you seem to be an honest guy and seem to be what we need as our leader. Please look into this matter and see what can be done. Thank you for your time.
And the case that she's talking about.
Yeah, she did refer to a case,
let's go with Travaglia.
Yeah.
If you say those names to people who have been involved in law enforcement as long as I have, we know those names immediately. I remember when the case, they went on a kill for thrill issue. Unfortunately, most people that aren't in law enforcement or the legal community do not understand that the governor can sign the execution warrants, and I have when it's come back up to me. But it's the court system that, and in this case, the federal court system, that can prevent that from happening on taking one appeal after another. Third Circuit Court of Appeals here that Pennsylvania is part of has really prevented a number of death penalty cases from going forward. One of these, though, and I just want to make sure I see my notes here, one of them, the Supreme Court has again turned down their appeal. But what happens is they keep coming back with a different avenue.
Right.
And we need to bring some finality.
It's been 12 years since the last execution in Pennsylvania,
Right.
and there have been death warrants signed every year since then.
I signed probably 10 last year, or maybe 10 the total time that I've been in office. I take them seriously. But what happens is they keep taking different bites at the apple. And this will take federal legislation to change this.